Well, I'm joined today by Hans Zollner, who is an expert in safeguarding and protecting minors regarding the abuse of children and other vulnerable adults. Father, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I would love for you just to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of the background of your work.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Hans Zollner. I'm a German Jesuit. I'm a theologian, psychologist, and psychotherapist by trade. I have been a professor at the Pontifical Gregorian University for 22 years now, and I have worked in the area of safeguarding full time, more or less, over many years now. I'm the director of the Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity and Care, formerly established as the Center for Child Protection, but in 2021, we became a full-fledged institute at the Gregorian University.
Father, talk to me about the spiritual reality of that conversion towards the victims. I mean, that seems to be an outlook that um, is has enormous implications on the way that one governs or the way that one looks at human persons.
Yeah, I've seen this myself when I was with victims of abuse. That when I started to work in this area, and many victims came to share their experience with me, the experience of the abuse, and the for them the more difficult in many cases when they were not listened to by church
Mm,
leaders, bishops, and provincials. When you listen to that type of experience, which is perhaps the most horrendous and the most difficult to bear, especially for those who were very faithful Catholics, grew up in families, were altar servers, went to Catholic schools, and so forth, to realize that this is such, uh, let me say, a breach of trust, that it is very difficult to continue in life, that it is very difficult to continue in faith and in adherence to the church. So for me, it was a conversion experience to realize that for many of them, this is something that they will have to deal with for all their lifetime. And the question of why and why me sticks to them every day, and they need to find an answer every day for this. Now,
mm,
I've seen in many victims that um, they've dealt with it. They have found their own response, also with the help of professional support, psychologies, therapy, and mostly with the help of community, family, good friends.
mm,
Sometimes also of faith communities when they are not, let me say, have not left the church or cannot enter into any church building anymore because of the harm that has been done to them.
mm,
Others despise the church and any type of faith, and any credibility is gone for them. So this is something that we need to own. You cannot run away from either experience. Those who have gone through hell and have found a place for themselves where they say they have found some peace or some type of reconciliation, or some type of healing, and others who won't forever come to such a point. But this is not their fault, but for a number of reasons, that is the reality they have to live with. And we have to live with as we accompany these people, as aggressive, as enraged, as let me say, uncomfortable they may be for us. But this is part of our responsibility to really own that. And I have seen many church leaders who exposed themselves to this
mm,
reality, did not run away because of the advice of their lawyers, not to listen to victims. And they were listening, really, and with the heart, and that was for them a very important conversion experience. This is not to say that then all was over. The scars, and sometimes even the open wounds remain, but at least there is some alleviation, and there is some, let me say, silver lining at the horizon. That it's not all dark here, and this
mm.
is what brought many church leaders who had the courage to face this reality, which is, by the way, their ministry. I mean, this is what we are all about.
Yes.
We follow Jesus Christ. This is where we have to be, even if it is very uncomfortable to acknowledge that this crime has happened in my church, in my diocese, in my province, it has happened by a friend of mine with whom I've studied and who has committed such a horrendous deed.
So, Father, talk to us a little bit about the progression that you've seen during your long time work with the Institute. How have you seen the church's response to this crisis evolve over time?
I think we have seen, especially over the last 15 years, a qualitative change in terms of attitude and in terms of legislation. I would say that in the previous 30 years or so, since the cases became public in Canada, in the US, in Australia, in Ireland, there was always a local response, but especially through Pope Benedict's insistence on a different type of approach when it came to allegations of abuse against clergy that had committed child sexual abuse, and in Pope Francis's, let me say, furthering and improving the response of from the church's side. We have seen a lot more countries, and more lot institutions, and of course leaders and responsibles, clergy and non-clergy, becoming much more aware that we need to face the allegations of abuse. We need to face the allegations of negligence in office by church leaders, and we need to come to a much better and a much more consistent approach in line with Jesus's message to all of us that the vulnerable ones, and especially children who are the most vulnerable among us, need to be protected so that they can live out their lives and their faith safely.
Now, Father, I'm not sure how much you've been following what happened in the lead up to the conclave, but one Italian priest who was himself a victim of sexual abuse distributed a letter to the cardinals. In it, he said, I am not the enemy. I'm here to let you know that uh, as hard as it is to forgive, it was easier for me to forgive the person who abused me in minor seminary than it was to forgive those who protected him. Talk to us about not just the responsibility to screen adequately for, um, oh, to screen those potential priests or bishops that could be abusers out, but to talk to us about what the response needs to be, once a victim comes forward.
First, the letter by this priest speaks very much to the experience of many victims with whom I have been in contact,
Mm.
for whom the sexual abuse, the sexual act in itself was terrible, horrendous, but many of them said that more difficult to bear was the lack of responsiveness and the lack of consistency when it came to the church leadership's, let me say, taking up the allegations and conducting investigation, coming to conviction. So this echoes what this priest has said, who himself has been a victim of abuse, and what I've heard from many, many victims. And that brings us to the most important point here, I believe, what in the training of clergy and religious is necessary is that we look at the screening when they knock at the door of the seminary or the novitiate and do a thorough screening. And even St. John Paul II, even in 1992, asked for that. That was taken up in the guidelines for priestly formation from 2016 at the Dicastery for Clergy, of which I'm a consultor since many years. So this is in principle is in place, and I think overall, if you look at the Catholic Church as a global reality, it's pretty well done when it comes to the screening, especially in countries like the US or in Europe. There are many measures and means that this screening is done professionally and adequately. However, the problem is that you will not be able to screen out possible perpetrators. Yes, initial formation and screening are important. So the years in seminary, the years in novitiate and studies until priestly ordination or a final profession as a religious are important. Yes, but more important probably is the time after ordination and religious profession, because we know that most of clergy that have abused have not abused when they were 25 or 26 years old. right after ordination. They have abused when they were about 40 years old or older. For the first time, they abused when they were right through mid-age, and that brings up an important question for us: how do we support and how do we insist on ongoing permanent formation and education of clergy after ordination?
And Father, you mentioned an important point too that if these abuses will continue, the reception of victims is incredibly important. Um, can you speak to us about the requirements in canon law for when a victim comes forward alleging a crime?
Now, okay, the canon law doesn't talk about empathy, doesn't talk about compassion.
Mhm.
Canon law talks about if there are facts that are reported, that the rightful church authority needs to take the following step. They need to start a preliminary investigation, and they are free to suspend the person who is accused, has been accused from any type of ministry. And this is what happens regularly, normally in, for example, the United States and in other parts of the world.
Mhm.
So when there is an allegation, the bishop or the provincial need to take that step and investigate. So ask somebody to investigate into the allegations, and then at the end of the investigation, when the report comes to the bishop or provincial, they need to forward it in any case to the dicastery for doctrine, and from that moment on, the dicastery determines what is going to happen, either a type of canonical procedure, either on the level of the local church or in Rome, or whether the case is dismissed. And this is what are the requirements. Apart from that, the canonical procedures and measures are only one thing. And of
Mhm.
course, law speaks only to legal procedures.
Right.
But as a bishop, as a provincial, as a priest, you have also to go beyond the sheer legal or canonical implications. You are also a pastor, and therefore you need to listen to victims of abuse, not only hearing but really listening
Mhm.
with the heart and with all your existence, so that the victims and the survivors of abuse learn, experience that you are with them in their pain and in their hurt. Apart from all what is going on in terms of canonical procedures, this is a very important ministry to victims and their families and the communities where hurt has happened.
Where is Latin America and Africa in regards to these trainings, the education, and the work that the church and your institute is doing in order to address and meet the standards of where the United States and others are today?
Our institute has been established almost 15 years ago now, precisely to further the educational and the research aspects when it comes to all what can be done in terms of safeguarding, so that our church institutions and our church presence as faithful and church leaders is really communicating, and that people can feel safe and are safe in our midst. And I do hope that we can broaden all this over the next years, and because our interest has always been to really help, especially those under-resourced areas in the world where you have very little competency and uh, unfortunately also not a lot of money that goes into the area of safeguarding. I do believe that the Catholic Church is doing a relatively good job, mind my words, a relatively good job when it comes to safeguarding. Relatively, okay, that is not all what could and should be done. It's not perfect, and it's good. It's not the best of all solutions, but we do surely a lot compared to other religions and other denominations or other state
Mhm.
institutions when
Mhm.
you look into the whole church. We offer training to church personnel in Rome in residential courses at our institute at the Gregorian. We offer an e-learning program in collaboration with partner institutions worldwide, and our focus has always been, as our institute has been working on this for 15 years now, those areas where you don't have much knowledge and expertise. When it comes, on the other hand, to dealing with the allegations of abuse, there we have a lot more to do. Unfortunately, we as a church, let me say, in many places, we have not realized yet that this is not something that you can deny, that you can run away from, but you have to face it squarely. You have to own the crimes and the sins of the past, and there is no way to establish effective safeguarding measures if you don't come to the understanding that victims and survivors need to be listened to and need also to be involved in the terms of safeguarding training that we as a church offer worldwide. Again, there are bishops everywhere, liberals and conservatives, who are very well aware and do the necessary. And in any country in this world, there are liberal and progressive or conservative bishops who are neglectful and have been so for many years. And we need to work to be more consistent in this area.
Well, Father, thank you so much. Just I would love to offer you any closing thoughts that you might have for um, Catholics and others who maybe don't walk alongside victims as often as you do, but just a word of encouragement or awareness for us in terms of our role in this, whether prayer or penance, whatever you would like to offer as advice for them.
First, I would hope that victims and survivors who are listening to this are really encouraged to come forward and to really disclose in a safe environment and under safe circumstances what they've gone through. Because for many survivors and victims, this is crucial also for coming to some type of a process that would perhaps also lead to some type of healing. Secondly, for all faithful, not only for church leaders, it is important that we face the reality that not all is well in our church and in our parishes, in our schools, in our kindergartens, in hospitals and old people's homes, that we need all of us to take some share, some responsibility. It's not only the church leaders who need to change attitude, it's also all of us who work in this field, but also all the people in the pews. It's that everybody can do something. It is his or her responsibility in whatever position we are. If we are among the baptized, if we are the one who come for mass, if we are the ones who have some role as acolytes or lectors or whatever, or surely to a different degree, those who are parish priests or directors of Catholic schools, and of course bishops and provincials, to do whatever is within our reach so that the church is a safer place, and we are following more closely the footsteps of Jesus Christ, who calls us to be there for all those who are vulnerable and who have been wounded.
Beautiful. Father Hans Zollner, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.